You see it on academy walls. You hear it in the official story. A small, frail man named Helio Gracie taught an ancient Japanese art, meticulously refining it in the crucible of no-holds-barred challenge matches. The result? A new form of combat so technically pure that size and strength become irrelevant. It is a story of a single brilliant family, a gentle art, and the promise that with the right knowledge, David will always beat Goliath. It's a powerful narrative, a cornerstone of the sport's global marketing. However, it's a narrative that strategically omits as much as it reveals. What we're about to do is embark on a chronological journey, an archaeological dig into the foundational myths of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This isn't just a list, it's a deconstruction of the official history, revealing the layers of bitter rivalries, forgotten masters, and the inconvenient truths that define the art we practice today. 1. The myth of the gentle art. Our examination begins with the very name Jiu-Jitsu, commonly translated as the gentle art. This phrase conjures images of effortless control, of subduing an opponent with poetic efficiency. It's a beautiful concept. It's also profoundly misleading for anyone who has ever had their guard passed by a 220-pound upper belt, an experience that feels less like a flowing river and more like a structural collapse. Now, on paper, the term gentle isn't a total fabrication. It refers to the philosophy of using leverage and efficiency over brute force, a strategic redirection of an opponent's energy. In that sense, compared to a striking art where the explicit goal is inflicting blunt force trauma, Jiu-Jitsu offers a gentler alternative. You have the option to control and submit someone without causing permanent injury. That is the ideal. But context, as always, is key. The reality of Jiu-Jitsu's development was anything but gentle. The art wasn't battle-tested in dojos with padded mats and a friendly slap-bump-roll etiquette. It was forged in the brutal, no-holds-barred arenas of Brazil, known as Vale Tudo, which translates literally to anything goes. These were not sporting events in the modern sense. They were raw, often bloody confrontations designed to prove stylistic superiority. The Gracie emphasis on ground fighting wasn't born from a philosophical desire to create a new, gentler style. It was a pragmatic strategy to survive and win against practitioners of capoeira, wrestling, and boxing. When you're fighting for your reputation in a context where eye gouges and groin strikes are possibilities, the application of technique is inherently violent. The goal is to break a limb or render an opponent unconscious. There is nothing gentle about that outcome. Even today, in the controlled environment of a modern academy, the training is grueling. It is a combat sport where the entire purpose is to simulate a fight to the death, ending just before the death part via a tap. Injuries are common, exhaustion is constant, and the physical and mental toll is immense. The true essence of Jiu-Jitsu, therefore, isn't gentleness. It is control. Specifically, the scalable application of violence, from a positional domination to a joint-breaking submission. 2. The myth of the sole creators. The second and arguably most significant pillar of the BJJ origin myth is the concept of the Gracie family as its sole creators. The official narrative is linear and clean. Japanese judoka Mitsuyo Maeda taught the art to Carlos Gracie, who passed it to his brothers, most notably the frail and brilliant Helio, who then single-handedly adapted the techniques for a smaller person. This version of history positions the Gracie family as the sole innovators and proprietors of the art. The truth is far more complex and far more interesting. The official history isn't a lie because it's entirely false, but because of its strategic omissions. It erases the names and contributions of other masters who were not only contemporaries of the Gracies, but in some cases, their direct rivals. Let's begin with Mitsuyo Maeda himself. While he did teach Carlos Gracie, he was not an exclusive tutor and taught numerous students across Brazil. One of the most important was a man named Luiz França. França, like Carlos, learned from Maeda and went on to develop his own distinct lineage of jiu-jitsu. However, unlike the Gracies, who primarily established themselves in the affluent areas of Rio de Janeiro, França and his students opened their doors to poor and working-class communities. This created a parallel branch of Jiu-Jitsu developing completely independent of Gracie influence. France's most prominent student was Oswaldo Fata. Fata was a visionary who believed Jiu-Jitsu should be for everyone, not just the wealthy. He famously offered free classes in the suburbs and favelas of Rio. For a long time, the Gracie school paid Fata no mind, but Fata and his students were developing a formidable and distinct style, becoming particularly known for their mastery of leg locks, techniques the Gracie school at the time looked down upon, derisively calling them suburban techniques. This all came to a head in 1955. Fata issued a public challenge to the Gracie Academy. What happened next was a seismic shock to the grappling establishment. Fata's team dominated. Using the very footlocks Helio had dismissed, Fata's students won the overwhelming majority of the matches. Following the victory, Oswaldo Fata declared, "We put an end to the Gracie taboo." Helio himself would later concede in an interview, "There needs to be a Fata to show that Jiu-Jitsu is not a privilege of the Gracies." This monumental event, a direct challenge that shattered the myth of Gracie invincibility, is almost completely absent from the popular history of the art, and it doesn't stop there. There was another pivotal and almost completely erased figure, Gio Omori. A Japanese judoka who immigrated to Brazil around 1925, Omori was a phenomenal fighter and teacher who established a jiu-jitsu school in São Paulo in 1928. He had several well-documented Vale Tudo matches against the Gracies, including Carlos, that often ended in draws, proving he was, at the very least, their equal. Crucially, Omori also instructed Luis França. The reason you know Maida's name and not Omori's is simple. Maida's name legitimized the Gracie story. Omori's name dismantled it. The history of jiu-jitsu in Brazil wasn't a straight line. It was a rich, chaotic, and competitive ecosystem of multiple Japanese masters and their diverse Brazilian students. The Gracies were undeniably brilliant promoters who played the central role in popularizing the art, but they were not its sole creators. They were the ones who won the marketing war and, as a result, wrote the history. 3. Technique conquers all. This brings us to the central marketing proposition of jiu-jitsu, the one that draws in smaller practitioners and serves as the philosophical core of the art. Technique conquers strength. And in a specific context, pitting a skilled practitioner against an untrained person of any size, this is absolutely true. That is the proof of concept. But the lie isn't that technique works. The lie is that it always works, and that strength is irrelevant. This lie dissolves the moment two individuals of equal technical skill face each other. In that scenario, the victor will be the person who is stronger, faster, and has superior cardio. Every single time. The highest levels of competitive jiu-jitsu are not populated by the weak and frail. They are dominated by world-class athletes who possess not only sublime technique, but also incredible physical attributes. To pretend that strength and athleticism aren't massive factors is to fail to account for the realities of high-level competition. Technique is not a replacement for strength, it is a force multiplier. A strong person with great technique will crush a weak person with great technique. This is the uncomfortable reality many face when a perfectly applied technique is simply muscled through by a stronger opponent. The issue isn't that the technique failed, it's that a significant disparity in strength can override a slight disparity in technique. This leads to the second, darker part of this lie, the politics of the art. The marketing presents a pure meritocracy, but the BJJ world is rife with politics that contradict this. Consider the term creonte, a pejorative for a student who leaves their academy to train elsewhere. This concept has nothing to do with improving one's technique and everything to do with protecting a coach's business interests. It is the antithesis of a true meritocracy. Furthermore, the political landscape of competition and team affiliations is a major factor. The BJJ world is dominated by a few massive teams, creating an environment where team politics can influence everything from referee decisions to superfight matchmaking. Certain athletes get opportunities not just because of their skill, but because of the team they represent. This stands in stark contrast to the romantic notion of an art where only pure skill matters. The truth is, Your affiliation and your ability to navigate the political landscape can be just as important to your competitive success as your triangle choke. Now, before we get to our final and perhaps most controversial lie, the discussion doesn't end here. I'm interested to read your own observations in the comments below. What are some of the biggest myths you were told when you first started training? And if you find this deep dive into the hidden architecture of BJJ valuable, your support in liking this video and subscribing is crucial for making more content like this possible. 4. The infallibility of the belt. The BJJ belt system functions as an icon of hierarchy and accumulated knowledge. From the hopeful white belt to the revered black belt, each color represents a massive investment of time and effort. In theory, the belt is a reliable indicator of skill. This is the fourth lie, that the belt is an infallible, standardized measure of skill. The truth is, the BJJ belt system is one of the most informal and subjective ranking systems in all of martial arts. There is no standardized curriculum. There is no universal test. The decision to promote a student rests solely with their instructor. This subjectivity leads to massive inconsistencies across the sport. A blue belt from a competition-focused academy might be able to dominate purple belts from a more casual, self-defense-oriented school. This isn't because one school is better, but because their standards for promotion are completely different. This subjectivity opens the door to the politics we discussed earlier. Sandbagging, the act of intentionally holding a skilled student back at a lower belt level so they can dominate competitions, is a common practice. Conversely, notorious cases of quick promotions for celebrities or the financially influential undermine the perceived value of the rank. Famed grappler Craig Jones has gone on record calling the black belt a marketing trick, a hook designed to keep people invested in the sport for longer periods, more than a true reflection of skill. The origin of the multicolored belt system itself is rooted in practicality, not romance. The story of a white belt turning black from dirt over years is a myth. Jigoro Kano, the founder of judo, initially only used white and black belts. It was when judo was introduced to the West that other colors were added, largely as a motivational tool to give Western students a more frequent sense of tangible progress. This isn't to say the belt system is useless. It provides direction, structure, and motivation. However, it is not a standardized, objective measure. It is a subjective assessment from a single individual influenced by their own biases and their academy's culture. So, what are we left with? This deconstruction of BJJ's foundational myths does not serve to diminish the art. On the contrary, the real history, full of forgotten masters like Oswaldo Fada and Jao Omori, is richer and more inspiring than the sanitized marketing narrative. It's a story not of a single dynasty, but of a collaborative and competitive community. The reality of the art, that it is a difficult, demanding, and sometimes brutal physical chess match, is more rewarding than the fantasy of a gentle art. Understanding that strength matters encourages a more holistic and honest approach to training. Recognizing the subjectivity of the belt system frees us to focus on personal growth rather than external validation. Jiu-Jitsu's greatest strength isn't found in its myths. It's found in the truth. It's found in the humbling realization that there is always more to learn. The legends are powerful, but the truth is, what will keep you on the mats? What part of the Jiu-Jitsu mythos do you think warrants a similar deconstruction next? The discussion continues in the comments.